I just checked my current client list, and over 75% of these clients that I currently work with were former DIYers who had never worked with a financial advisor before. Most of them had done a great job accumulating assets and living within their means, which, by the way, is a huge component of building wealth. But in my experience, there's always blind spots that DIYers have that can cost them a ton in higher fees, extra taxes paid, lower returns, or the worst of all, time. In this video, we'll discuss 5 common mistakes that I see DIYers make after working with hundreds of clients over the course of my career as a certified financial planner. Hopefully you can use this information to eliminate blind spots in your own plan, but just to be clear, this video is educational and should not be considered personalized financial advice. By the way, if we haven't met, my name is Jake Skellhorn. I'm a certified financial planner and the co-founder of Spark Wealth Advisors. We're based here in Jacksonville, Florida, but we help people across the country retire with confidence and clarity. To stay up to date on any future videos, be sure to subscribe to the channel, like it, and leave a comment below with any questions. The 5 mistakes that we're going to cover here in just a moment, 4 of them are quantitative, so there's a number that you can put on the savings, the potential savings or cost of these mistakes, whereas the last one is more on the emotional side. So make sure you stick around for that one because that one is a little bit different, but it's a common one that I see. So the first mistake that I see is people underestimating healthcare costs. A lot of times people think that when they turn 65 and they're eligible for Medicare, that is going to be the end all be all of what they have to pay for medical expenses. But that's just simply not the case. In fact, a Fidelity study in 2023 found that a retiree retiring at age 65 last year expect to spend an average of $157,000 throughout the course of their retirement in addition to Medicare costs. So this can come in the form of copays, deductibles, and Medigap policies for costs that are not covered under Medicare. Another overlooked item on the healthcare front is long-term care costs. It's estimated that 70% of people will need long-term care at some point in their life, and that can be extremely expensive and of course is not covered by Medicare. So a lot of people choose to fund this with a reverse mortgage. You can self-fund it. In other words, just set aside money in your own retirement savings to pay for it yourself. If you have low enough assets and income at that point, then you may qualify for Medicaid to pay for your long-term care, but it's something that you need to think about as early as possible to plan ahead and avoid any surprises when it comes to long-term care. We budget about $7,000 per year per client for healthcare expenses in addition to Medicare throughout retirement. And then we also budget about $70,000 per year for the last 2 years of your life if you plan to self-fund long-term care. And those numbers are, of course, in today's dollars and will increase each year with inflation. Second mistake that I see people make is neglecting tax planning. So tax planning is the process of using forward-looking strategies to reduce your lifetime tax bill. So it's a little bit different than tax filing, where most CPAs will help you file taxes from last year and tell you what you owe or what you're going to get as a refund. But tax planning, again, is looking forward, utilizing the tax code to your advantage to not pay any more taxes than you need to, which ultimately results in more money that you can spend on what's important to you. So some examples of good tax planning would be utilizing Roth conversions in your lower income years, perhaps after you've retired, but before you claim Social Security benefits. When your income is low, it's a good opportunity to move money from those pre-tax accounts to the Roth accounts at those low tax brackets so you never have to pay taxes or worry about what future tax rates will be. Conversions can also reduce your RMDs later in life, which can have indirect effects on your Medicare premiums as well as Social Security benefits. So by the time you're 73 or 75 and you're required to start taking money out of your traditional IRA, whether you need it or not, it would involuntarily increase your taxable income, which again could cause your Social Security benefits to be taxable or create what's called IRMA surcharges, which is an income-related monthly adjustment amount, which again is basically an additional surcharge on Medicare. Planning could also involve a tax-efficient sequence of withdrawals. In other words, which accounts you should pull from first in retirement in order to not overpay in taxes based on what your spending goals are, what your monthly income needs to be in retirement. There's a multitude of different orders or sequences that you can take money out of your various accounts, such as traditional IRAs, Roth IRAs, and brokerage accounts. And the order in which you take those can make a huge difference over the course of your life in taxes owed. So again, having a plan for which accounts to pull from first when you retire is something that I often see people don't pay any attention to or even think about which again can have a six-figure effect in taxes owed over your lifetime. A big mistake that I see people make, and even a lot of my fellow advisors aren't aware of, is planning for sequence of returns risk. I recently made a video on this specifically if you want to check that out in more detail. But essentially, sequence of returns risk is the risk that you're going to start your retirement with a series of bad years in the stock market, which isn't such a big deal when you're earlier on in your career because you have that time to allow the stock market to bounce back. But when you're retired, you need to still sell those investments for income. So while the market is down, you're also selling investments, which is kind of dragging your portfolio further down and can have a lasting effect on the success of your plan. So a few ways that you can plan for sequence of returns risk would be to use a bucket strategy. In other words, set aside a few years of living expenses in cash and money market funds, a few additional years in low risk investments like bonds, and then anything beyond that can be invested in the stock market so that if the market does crash or take a sharp dive early in your retirement, you don't have to pull from those investments. You can pull from the lower risk and more stable ones while the market bounces back. So that's just one example. Again, check out the other video if you want to learn more about sequence of returns risk. But again, sequence of returns risk is something I see almost nobody prepare for before they start working with us as DIY investors. Fourth mistake that I see people make very commonly is overlooking estate planning. So estate planning is a huge part of your financial plan, whether you want your assets to be distributed to your heirs or to a charity. It's important that you have that spelled out in estate documents as soon as possible, and it's reviewed regularly to make sure there's no new accounts that have been left out or your wishes have changed. But estate planning essentially involves keeping your will up to date, having a trust if appropriate, power of attorneys, or if you become incapacitated. All those are extremely important to make sure that your assets are distributed according to your wishes and you are taken care of in the manner that you would like to if you can't make those decisions for yourself. For higher net worth folks, there are a ton of estate planning strategies that you can use to avoid the 40% estate tax. So rather than giving that money away to the government, by planning ahead, you can make sure that your family keeps more of your assets after you pass. Estate planning also involves the simple task of making sure your beneficiaries are up to date. I recently saw an article in the Wall Street Journal where a man had died and he had over $1 million in his 401k. He still had his ex-girlfriend from 30 years ago listed as his primary beneficiary, and his surviving siblings were rightfully livid, and they unfortunately were not able to get that money because he had the beneficiary designation listed as his ex-girlfriend. So beneficiary designations often trump what is in a will. So make sure that you're regularly reviewing those beneficiaries and making sure it's updated in accordance to your wishes. And the last on this short list of mistakes that I have seen DIY investors make throughout the course of my career is simply not preparing for the emotional side of retirement. A lot of times when we think of retirement, myself included, we think of how much money we're going to need to save up, how much money we're going to be able to spend each year, things like healthcare costs, what returns we're going to have, etc. But we often don't think about what our day-to-day is going to look like, the lack of social interaction that we get from our jobs. So these are all extremely important things to think about. I always like to say you need to know what you're retiring to and not just what you're retiring from. So make sure you have hobbies, things that you plan to do on a day-to-day basis in retirement, whether it be volunteering, could even be part-time work if you need to continue to have some sort of income in retirement. But make sure you understand what your purpose will be in retirement. A lot of us kind of tie our identities to our jobs after working for these companies for 30, 40 years. So just try to focus on what your new identity will be in retirement. Find ways to stay busy, keep the mind busy, exercise, things like that. So that's one piece of it. The other piece, and a very important one, is to prepare for that shift from the saving mindset into the spending mindset. A lot of times I work with people who have been extremely diligent about saving money for retirement. They've been putting away, 10, 20, 30% of their income for decades. And all of a sudden it's time to start spending that. But it's not just a switch that you can turn on or off. So a lot of that is emotional coaching and really showing these people that you have saved your whole life for this. You are ready to spend this money. You can afford to. We run all kinds of projections with them to show, based on their investments and their historical returns of their investments, that the amount that they want to spend each month has a very low chance of them running out of money. So those things often help, but you can start kind of coaching yourself into that new mindset, the better, because the last thing you want is to reach your later years where you're less mobile, less active, and have regrets about not spending money. So that's the other piece that I really enjoy talking to people about, is that emotional side. Reaching those golden years and really getting the most out of them, and not being anxious about running out of money, the stock market, whatever it might be. Once again, these are just a few of the mistakes that I've seen DIY investors make throughout my career as a financial planner. If you have any others, be sure to leave a comment below to see if it can help other people avoid them in the future. If you're looking for help with your own financial plan in retirement, be sure to reach out to us at the link below. We'd love to have a free consultation with you to see if we're a good fit to work together. Besides that, I hope you enjoyed this video, and we will see you in the next one. Thanks for joining.